question I often get asked is, what are the best sinks? And like with most products, there's fors and against. So what I'm going to do today is just run through the different options and what may suit you best personally. So first thing to consider when having a sink is actually what work surface is it going into. So if you've got a solid surface worktop, that means that you can have either an insert or an undermount sink. But if you're going for a laminate worktop, you would only be able to have an insert sink. So what I mean by those is when you have an insert sink, the sink itself is inserted from above into the worktop, and you'll have the sink, but you'll also have a drainer that's next to it. So it's all part of the same piece of material. If you was going for an undermount sink, then the sink would be mounted on the underside of the worktop. And then you would end up having drainer grooves routed into the work surface itself. If you tried to do that with a laminate, what happened is obviously water would get into the edge of the laminate worktop and it would blow. So that's why you would have to go for the insert. With both of these, there is fors and against again. So if you had an undermount sink, you would route the drainer grooves into the worktop. So aesthetically, it would make your worktop look larger. You would notice your sink less, so it would make the sink a little bit more discreet. The main kind of issue with this is predominantly the work surface is still flat. Because it's still flat, if you've got water draining onto that, it can drain off into other directions. Obviously, you will have 4 sort of tapered lines routed into it. They do work to a degree, but they're nowhere near as good as what an insert sink would be. Also, you can get a little bit of water that will then sit into those areas. If you do a huge amount of washing up by hand, what you can get is like a black sort of square sponge mat that you'll put underneath your drainer, and this can be quite handy. So you would obviously finish washing up. Once that's all done, wring the mat out and then place that back underneath your sink. So that's an option around it if you prefer the sort of aesthetic look to an undermount. Also, the other thing with an undermount is it's generally with the more expensive worktops. So if you do go for that option, obviously people come around, they will notice obviously it's a more expensive worktop. The other thing to consider is whether you want a 1 bowl or a 1.5 bowl. With an insert sink, generally the overall size of the sink will remain the same, but if you went for 1.5 bowl, that half bowl in the middle will take a little bit of space off the drainer and a little bit of space off the main bowl. So if it is your priority that you've got a large bowl for potentially washing up larger pans and things like that, a single bowl may be the better option for you. Or if you go, do you know what, you finish with that 1/4 cup of coffee and something's already in soak, if you go for the half bowl, you've got an option obviously of pouring that into there. Or if you wanted to bleach your cloths or anything like that, the half bowl can be quite a handy option for you. The next thing to consider would be the material of the sink. So you could go for, say, a stainless steel sink, and there is quite a variety of stainless steel sinks depending on the quality that you want. So you could go for a cheaper option, which would be, say, something like pressed stainless steel sink, which would be really cost effective. The main kind of downside to those type tends to be that when you do put your tap in, there can be quite a lot of flex in the tap because it's quite a thin sort of steel that it's onto. Or you could go to a thicker gauge, like an 1810 sort of gauge of stainless steel, where it's kind of welded joints on those, which are a lot more kind of robust. So that could be a better option. But like I say, obviously there would be quite a big cost difference between those two. The other great thing with stainless steel is that hygiene-wise, it's fantastic. Limescale-wise, it's pretty good as well, depending if you're in a hard water area or not. The other thing is, as well as it can take quite a hit. So if you do drop something in it, it will flex and things will bounce off it a little bit better. So depending if you're a little bit clumsy or anything, then it could be quite a good option for that. The biggest probably downside is to stainless as it does scratch quite easily. Generally, it'll look best on kind of first day of installation, and then maybe 6 months later. Day 2, when you get your first scratch on it, it'll probably look the worst, but after sort of 6 months, it will kind of get uniformly scratched. So it wouldn't necessarily stand out at that point. Next option would be, say, a porcelain sink. So with a porcelain sink, you could go for a normal undermount, or you might go for, say, a Belfast butler type sink, where you will see the front edge of the sink physically on display. Again, these sinks, because they're highly glazed, fantastic for cleaning, make it really, really easy. So again, if you're in a hard water area, a lot of limescale, they're great for that side, so for wiping down. Biggest downside is traditionally they can chip or they can mark if you have sort of metal work or anything go against them. I mean, I've personally had porcelain sink. I've got 3 young kids, and yeah, they kind of drop things in it all the time. I've not had any issues with that. One thing I have noticed is that a couple of our plates have chipped, so they're not quite as forgiving, say, a stainless steel sink would be. So just something to bear in mind. The other option would be, say, like an injection molded sink. These again are really cost effective. Because they're not the smoothest finish, you can get quite a problem with limescale with these types of sinks. So that would just be something to bear in mind with those, and they can mark quite sort of easily. The other option finally would be sort of a quartz, sort of granite composite sink. These types of sinks are really hard wearing, really robust. There's a German company called Shock. If you ever sort of search their video, they actually shoot the gun and the bullet bounces off the sink, albeit at quite sort of a shallow angle. But yeah, they're a very sort of robust sink. If you do hit them though in the right place, they can crack. I don't think it would be take as knock as much as, say, a stainless steel would do. The other thing to bear in mind is if you are in a hard water area, even with the better quality composite sinks, kind of a smoother finish, you still can get a limescale issue, particularly on the dark blacks. Even if you went for, say, a white one, you might not notice the limescale there, but it would still be there. And over a period of time, what can happen is you can look like your sink's maybe stained, and it actually hasn't. The limescale, that's actually sort of staining. Again, something to be aware of. That's where you tend to probably go for sort of the creams or the light greys if you're going for a composite sink in a hard water area. Hope that's been useful.